left, right.
All right, this is the politics episode. I apologize in advance for what you're getting yourself into. There are many, many more episodes, so if you simply want to hear my voice, you have lots more to choose from. But in the meantime, this gets a bit dicey. We got 4 on the podcast today, so I understand completely that can be difficult to listen to. So again, this is your forewarning, and not only is it dicey with 4 people, we're still talking about a dicey topic. So it is what it is. I promise you, next episode will be a lot more light. Catch me on the far end of this podcast. I'll tell you what's upcoming. But thank you again for joining, subscribing, listening, watching. I'll see you guys. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course, it's good.
Cheers.
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 All right, looks like we are live on 1, 2, 3 platforms. Welcome to Sip Talk. This is episode 74. My name is Justin DiGiulio. I'm joined by James the Bartender Boswell. James, we got 2 guys on deck today, both poli-sci majors. We're going to bring them in a little bit. I'm going to let you take the lead. You just tell me when to bring them in.
Well, you can introduce Adam since you know him much better than I do. But for those of you who weren't watching yesterday, introduce my brother. He was a poli-sci major at Siena College, and he has worked as an intern for New York State representatives. He has also done advocacy and outreach for the ACLU, and I don't remember the other organization, so he can tell you about that. But I'll ask him to explain what kind of political work he's done, and he still follows politics very closely, and he's going to have a lot of good comments too. We really want to talk. My idea for this cast tonight is it's been a while since we've had Adam on. He knows a lot about politics as well, and I wanted to kind of pick his brain and get my brother to kind of play off of him in terms of the events of the last 6 to 8 weeks plus.
Sure, and we got 2 poli-sci majors who a little more in tune with politics probably than we are. So we're going to bring them in just a minute. But I do want to let you know, James, last night I brought up the idea of a pet peeve episode, and we're getting a lot of traction. So if you guys are watching this, hit me on Instagram, send me a DM. Let me tell me your biggest pet peeves, because they're piling up. And literally, I was reading through them this afternoon and this evening, and I was literally almost out of the chair just laughing at some of these things. They're absolutely hilarious.
So yeah, let's collect those all up and we'll do an episode maybe next Tuesday.
We got an upcoming episode, but today again we're going to be talking about politics. I know a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are really just kind of here to tune in and have some drinks and watch us goof around. We'll still be drinking and goofing around tonight, but without further ado, I'm going to bring them in. So if you're watching and not listening, we're going to have a bit of technical issues as we make some adjustments to bring these guys all in on the screen. But let's see. Oh, they're piling up. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, and it looks like, oh boy, this is fun. All right, let's see how far down I can bring this. You guys are all on the camera, so that's good. I thought we were going to have some slightly greater technical issues. So I know we got Adam Sindeband coming at us from DiGiulio Group office in Midtown Manhattan. And then we got David Boswell coming from, are you in Sacramento?
Sunny Sacramento.
Sunny Sacramento. So David, I'll let you introduce yourself and your qualifications and let us know what you're drinking. And then Adam, you're on par here.
I got you.
Alrighty. David Boswell here, James's brother from Sunny Sacramento, poli-sci major. Worked for the lobby group for all of the different Planned Parenthoods in New York State for a number of years. I worked for the New York Public Interest Research Group as a canvasser, doing door-to-door, asking for donations, which is a very fun time if you haven't had the chance to go door-to-door asking strangers for money. Moved to Sacramento last year. Plans are move to the capital because it's California, one of the biggest state capitals, and I want to get back into advocacy and politics work. So current plan is going back to school for master's in public policy administration at Sacramento State. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I live 2 blocks away from the capital, but not next couple of weeks, next couple of years, that'll be my place of work. So
you better
my
not
qualifications.
move. You better not move. All right. What are you drinking?
What I'm drinking is the finest bourbon that $17 can buy. Evan Williams on the rocks, a handle at $17, a steal at twice the price.
So look, if anybody out there is a real connoisseur of ball buster of Scotch and whiskey, you need to understand that, and I know Adam's laughing to himself, that we have an affinity for some really nice stuff. This is actually a rather cheap bottle of Ardbeg, but Ardbeg's a great Scotch. But for those of us that consume on a very regular basis, we're not always looking to break the bank, and we have some trusted, like your trusty steed. He may not be. He may not be, nobody's betting on him in a trifecta, but you can take him out. You can hit the laps of them every morning. And, that is an Evan Williams.
Is that how you start your mornings?
Well,
depending on
this week was good.
I'm glad you said
this week was going to go.
Well, all right. So Ahmad Sindeband, you're up.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? So first off, I'm actually drinking a hazy IPA from Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. Pretty awesome beer. I studied poli-sci in college. I was a minor in journalism and marketing, and I currently am an associate broker here with Justin at the Julio Group Real Estate, New York City. Working a bit of a late night tonight on a lease signing for last minute, but that's me.
What are you drinking? Oh, you said you're drinking a beer, Adam. You're not usually.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to switch it up from doing a heavy liquor right now. I'm just kind of experimenting with some different beers and IPAs. Lately, I've been really getting into it. It's not that bad, but I really like the hazy IPA. It's actually really good. If you guys have never tried it before,
it is. And James, what are you drinking down there in cloudy South Carolina?
So I just killed off the remaining bottle of rum, and once that glass is empty, I'm going to switch to the Glenlivet Caribbean Reserve.
Ooh, yeah.
That sounds good.
All right, cool. I got some wine here. I didn't want to hit the Scotch because I may indeed, as I mentioned, the last cast, which as we filmed was last night. I may have coronavirus, and I felt pretty good all day. Most of my body aches went away. But I've been getting a little hazy in the brain today, especially this afternoon. So, I don't want to hit anything hard. I think I'll just push off a bottle of wine. I'm not going to drink that much for real, but I'd like to have a little drink while we're casting here. And so I'm gonna actually. David sent me an email a little while ago with some of the talking points. I'm gonna let David actually kind of pick up a direction. But so David, so you worked at Planned Parenthood, right?
So I worked for their 501c4 group, which is they can do politicking. A nonprofit can't do politicking. They can't advocate for someone. Planned Parenthood is a nonprofit. What they have is a separate entity, and it used to be called Family Planning Advocates New York. They've since changed their name, but the affiliates would take non-donation dollars for their nonprofit work. There's only political donations that could go to us. All of the Planned Parenthood affiliates in New York contributed to our organization. So we're kind of like an umbrella, and we advocate for all of them. So that's some of my background there. And then there's the public interest research group work.
You said that really fast, but
yeah,
you
I don't want to get into the weeds about different nonprofit organizations and taxation status. That would kill your viewership. But yeah, effectively worked as a lobbyist for Planned Parenthood.
Okay, interesting. And you did that in New York?
Yes.
Okay. You should try that in South Carolina. I imagine that.
Different crowd. Yeah. Know your audience.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So obviously we got a new president. It's my understanding that he's basically just been sitting in the Oval Office reversing a shit ton of stuff that Trump signed.
That's pretty accurate.
Can you talk about some of those things? Talk about what's going on. Maybe we'll get to the impeachment in just a minute. But the only thing I hear about in the news every morning is that we have Biden sitting in a chair. There's an audio clip of him signing something saying, "I don't even know what this is," and the person just saying, "Sign there anyways," and he signs. So what kind of stuff is he repealing effectively? And
Well,
how's
moving aside the elder abuse jokes of you don't need to moving past the elder
your
abuse
will.
jokes of here, Grandpa, just sign. You don't need to know what's in it. And that just, I mean, kind of an
No, that
onion
was
article.
Bush and Cheney. We don't need to go back to that. No.
Really more Reagan.
Reagan sleepy. A lot of the executive orders that he's signing are, like you said, basically just undoing all the stuff that Trump did. So you've got some of the Muslim immigration ban, you've got the family separation policy at the border, you have a couple of different environmental policies that he's changing. Basically, any rule that was passed by the Trump administration in the last 120 days has been summarily reversed.
Could I ask a question though? Some of these things, like the Muslim ban, or separating kids from their parents at the borders. I feel like a lot of these may have potentially been in place during the Obama administration. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the media gave them such bad coverage under Trump. Is there any accuracy to that?
Not really. The Muslim ban was heavily litigated. This is something Trump came out and said, we're going to stop immigration from those countries. And then he did it. And what the Democrats argued, because they sued him, was, look, he's saying outright, this is a ban on Muslim people. So
well, he said that during the campaign.
He did. He said, we're going to ban the Muslims from coming in. So they used his words as a candidate saying, look, this is all that they're doing. So what they did after they had to kind of reverse, because you run into First Amendment issues when you target a specific religion, they had to go back and say, well, no, it's not about Muslims anymore, and they tailored it in such a way, and the courts let them basically have a do-over. And the Muslim ban was what we're looking at 2017 that they implemented.
That was early on.
As for the child separation policy, it is true that there were children that were in ICE custody under Obama. The big difference here is that under Obama, if they came together as a family group, mother, daughter, whatever, it doesn't matter, family group, they wouldn't be separated under the Obama policy.
Well, the argument for doing that is that people just kind of pair up as they're crossing the border, and they're like, "This is my kid. This is my kid," and they have no way to prove that or which I don't see what forcing them to separate actually.
I don't know any evidence though to that, Justin, either though. So I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that. I think you can make an argument for it, but I don't know.
That's the argument that they're making. But
but do they have proof that it actually happened?
Well, either you're putting them in the same cage, or you're putting them in different cages. I don't really see how that affects things.
Well,
fair enough.
Christopher Hitchens' razor, and that can be posited without evidence, can be dismissed without evidence. So unless I can see it, I can't really analyze that. So back to the question of, were children in IC custody under Obama? Yes. Were families separated under Obama and children were separated from the parents? No. They were in custody together or they were released. That's the big difference between the two policies. You actually had an Inspector General report come out today that really, really tore into Jeff Sessions and the Office of the Attorney General for this policy, because they completely disregard their lawyers. They disregard the realities of the situation. They said, well, they're only going to be separated for maybe up to 72 hours. It's really easy, unify them. What immigration proceedings from detention to sentencing happens in 72 hours? Exactly zero. So
unifying
people to think that they can do this correctly, and we got the results that everyone knew was going to happen. You're going to have kids that you can't find the parents for. I mean, the Trump administration, the only thing that stopped them from being, in my opinion, obviously I'm pretty liberal, more evil, was that they were just so incompetent.
Well, I don't know if incompetent would be the word I would use, but I would use the word more or less. They didn't have any real understanding of how government works. So they may have been smart in certain aspects of what they did, but like an actual government function, they had no idea how to actually enact laws, which is why, like, when you look at the Biden administration right now,
How is that not
things are happening.
competence?
Well, you could still be, I could be competent in like building a house, but I may not be competent in building an engine for a car. So there are certain aspects of where you can be smart, but I don't know necessarily the people he hired around him, being Trump, were competent in actually how to enact laws, enforce it, and make sure that it
I'm not
connects with
saying
other
they're not
facets.
intelligent people. I'm sure some of them
No,
are
I know you're
very,
not.
very brilliant at what they do. But
Yeah.
look at the census policy. That is sheer incompetence that screwed that up because they didn't do it the proper way, and it backfired. They wanted to not count non-citizens, and because they screwed up the process so badly, like you said, because they don't know government, they didn't get to do it. If they had done it just a little bit differently, they would have passed, and the Supreme Court said so. Roberts said so.
Well,
But
this is
because
why
they made
someone
the
like
record
Josh,
so clear.
and I don't mean to interrupt you, David, but that's why somebody like
No, not
Josh
at all.
Hawley or Ted Cruz scares the living daylights out of me, because they see how someone who's so incompetent with a team like this could get this far. I mean, how far could someone like Josh Hawley, who had the best fundraising month out of any senator in United States history over the past month alone, is most likely going to run for president in 3.5 years. So that tells me that it's incredibly scary. And you know, I understand that Biden's trying to push COVID relief as one of the first things through budget reconciliation, which we were talking about earlier. But I don't understand why we're not putting more guardrails on the presidency in terms of the Supreme Court. I don't think Congress should be controlling that, but definitely the Supreme Court, where they're held a bit more accountable, because I could imagine that in the future, maybe not even our lifetimes, but definitely in our children's lifetimes, there will be somebody who will abuse that power to the utmost. And that's incredibly terrifying for me, at least, especially after the past 4 years. I don't know what you guys think, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Can I jump in on one thing that you said that jogged memory? The business law class that I took it was actually about 4 years ago. It started right at about the same time that Trump was inaugurated. And the professor was a former lawyer. I think he still has his law license, but he doesn't practice. And we talked about, just basic business law stuff. And a lot of it had to do with the federal regulation infrastructure and all the different federal agencies. And we talked about what's called Chevron deference, which dates back to, I believe, the 80s. And it was a case where, and I'm probably getting some of the facts wrong, but the conclusion is going to be mostly correct, which is, let's call it the EPA, but there was a federal agency that was looking to regulate an activity that Chevron Corporation was doing. And Chevron challenged it and went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And Chevron basically said, this federal agency of the executive branch is legislating. They're coming up with new regulations that Congress themselves didn't pass. Congress said, hey, EPA, you've got the authority to regulate the environment or whatever. But Congress didn't say the EPA can expressly regulate whatever we're trying to do. And so Chevron said, they don't have the power to regulate this because Congress didn't expressly give the authority to you guys to do that. And so the EPA and the government argued, well, we have the regulation authority to regulate what Congress said, and there's a lot of breadth in what we can do. And so the Supreme Court basically said that unless a federal regulating agency makes a rule that is arbitrary and capricious, then we give deference to the regulators. And that's where the term Chevron deference comes from. So if a federal regulation authority comes up with something that just seems arbitrary or capricious, which basically means intentionally harmful, then you aren't going to be able to say that they're acting outside the bounds of their authority. And you saw this argument being made a number of times with Trump policies about Chevron deference. And basically the people that were challenging the policies were saying that these are arbitrary and capricious policies. You saw that very early on with the Muslim immigration ban, Muslim travel ban. They said this is arbitrary. Why are you picking just Muslims?
Right.
And
Sort
so,
of. Yeah, I actually, that's a great comparison, by the way, James.
and the professor throughout, like, if I were to say there was one thread that he tied through the entire thing, it was him raging about how Congress doesn't do its job because they have basically passed so much of the power that's written in the Constitution to them. They've passed it on to the executive branch and let the president make the decisions, or let the regulating agencies make the decisions, which the president is indirectly or directly in charge of. And so Congress basically doesn't do what they're supposed to be doing in terms of legislating these things specifically, and just letting the agencies deal with it. And they're part of the executive branch and not really under Congress's control unless Congress were to pass a law telling them what they can and can't do. And he just, I swear, it was like every week he would talk about how Congress needs to take back the power that is constitutionally granted to them.
All right, I want to get back into some of the stuff that right now that Biden is undoing. So we got the Muslim ban, which, you know, I want to kind of explain the Muslim ban real quick, because I feel like, you know, James and David, we all grew up in upstate New York. Adam, you grew up on Long Island. Maybe Long Island a bit more diverse than where we grew up. But I can tell you, as someone who grew up in a mostly white neighborhood, I didn't know anybody who was Muslim.
You knew one.
Okay, but
The John DeLees.
Okay, I didn't realize they were Muslim. But now in New York City, I probably have 25 to 40 people saved in my phone by the first name of Muhammad. And we have Adam can attest to the fact that I would say maybe a third of our company is Muslim, maybe less, but a lot of Muslim people in our company. But when I grew up upstate, so I'm trying to put my mindset in the person who grew up upstate. And obviously you got Afghanistan, Iraq, a lot of these countries where there are terrorists are Muslim. So I think it's a pretty easy sell to the vast majority of America that is not a culturally dense place like New York City, or even probably more so Sacramento, and even maybe downtown Charleston, than places like where we grew up in upstate, or I don't know what it's like where you are on Long Island. But I could guess if I went to any city in, you know, any of the Midwestern states, I probably would have a difficult time finding a Muslim person. So just, you know, if all you know about Muslim is that's what is the religion of people from Afghanistan and Iraq, I feel like it's probably a pretty simple sell. But when somebody I work with is like, yeah, you know, my family can't travel for this wedding because because they're banning all of them, that seems obnoxious. Yeah. So it's difficult to digest, because it's you know, a blanket Muslim ban is just insane. But obviously we want to, safety is an actual concern of our country. And, you know, Adam from Long Island, you got was it M83? Is that the band, or is that
No, it's definitely not a band.
Oh, no, M83.
M83 is a band.
It's a great band. It's a great band.
Their song "Go" is a great running song.
But also it's a not terrorist, but it's like I mean, effectively terrorist.
It is. Yeah, M83 on Long Island is a terrorist group. That's why I was. But
it would be funnier if the band M83 were terrorists.
Well, you know,
MS-13.
MS-13.
MS-13. They're
MS-83.
Yeah, but they're also not Muslim.
I'm sorry, I stand corrected.
No, but they're not Muslim.
No,
but
they're not.
They're Mexican.
No, like El Salvador.
They're El Salvador middle schoolers, and they terrorize Long Island.
Right.
So, but I wanted to add a little perspective, just that it's a pretty easy sell saying Muslim ban, because most people don't know anybody Muslim. Yeah. And as James and I have talked about in previous podcasts, when you look at other people as other, rather than just, you know, I don't know how else you would contextualize not other, but you know, like we look at the people that we work with as not other, but then when you say Muslims and people in Afghanistan, that very much feels like other. So to keep other people out, you feel like you're not really affecting their lives. But when you realize it's somebody who sits at a desk right next to you, it's their brother or their mother or their aunt or their grandparents or their kids, it just feels a little bit different. And just blanket banning them out of the country seems insane. So sorry, guys, I'm a bit long-winded. And again, I don't have something's going on in my brain, which is leading me to believe now I'm actually freaking out that I may have coronavirus.
Well, alcohol kills a lot of things, so.
I don't think it kills coronavirus.
This is true.
If there was some way I could shine enough sunlight up my asshole, I'd probably be good.
Have you tried
I was
injecting?
gonna say, yeah, there's bleach.
Well, I got a lot of.
You could actually probably just do it. You could do it like a wet bath with Clorox wipes. That might help.
Well, I'll
Might do you
scrounge,
some good, actually.
I'll scrounge around the basement. I got a lot of cleaning supplies in the new house.
Anyway, to get back on topic, why don't we kind of shift gears a little bit to talk about the COVID relief bill that's coming up, like over the next week or two.
Yeah,
I
haven't caught much of the news this week because obviously the snowstorm and shoveling and shit like that. But there's a new. So I actually just got. It's sitting on the desk because I don't even know it's real. I got a United States Treasury check for $600. It says Economic Impact Payment, President Donald J. Trump. I don't know if it's.
Yeah, that's your $600 stimulus check.
Yeah, but it's a Trump check, so I don't know if it's still good.
Oh.
No, it's good. No, you can cash it.
Was it mailed to you from Nigeria?
Just
You want
don't
to
cash it out
take me out
immediately.
to dinner?
Yeah,
I
give it
have-
the 30 days to clear.
Adam may have seen it this week. I've gotten a couple of these, but I'm going through some.
Got multiple $600 checks?
No. If I could duplicate that, whatever.
Well, you got a copy machine in the office.
But I got a $91,000. Adam, what was it? $91,000 fake check in the mail
From the beverage company or something like that?
Yeah, resurfaced.
Is that just a refund for all the
Bless you.
booze that you've purchased in the last couple of years?
You should see my taxes. But no, I got a fake check.
Yeah, right.
For some wannabe investor.
That's actually just the bottle deposit amount.
Oh yeah, I know. Just
that
like
he's
the
missed out
customer
on.
rewards program. They
Hey,
finally.
I look at that
out.
as it's a tax reduction at that point. Like you could just deduct that from your taxes at the end of the year, like a bottle deposit. I'm fine with that.
So let's talk about this new economic impact bill. Whatever's going on. One of you, David.
Okay, I'll pick it up a little bit, and David, maybe you can help me out. But right now, the Biden administration is offering a $1.9 trillion plan for extending unemployment services until about September, if I'm not mistaken. More small business loans. The whole idea of their package is more direct to the actual person, because the first bill that came out last spring was really geared towards everybody. But what we realized 6 months into that bill being passed was that most big businesses actually took part in that bill. You're going to tell me no?
Well, no.
Most big businesses didn't need the money, but
No,
they kind of.
Sorry.
Let me give you guys some perspective on this. In March or April, I think it must have been April last year, I applied for economic injury disaster loan and which is the EIDL and the PPP. But I did that with the mindset that we'd be reopened effectively if people kept their mask on for another 2 or 3 weeks. Like it was originally a 2-week lockdown, and then they extended it another 10 days or something. And I'm like, this is going to be at least 2 more months. And now it's literally almost a year later. And basically, I probably never would have taken those loans out. I would have restructured our company entirely. We would not be carrying a 4,000 square foot office. We wouldn't be doing anything that we're doing now. I would have, had I had the foresight to realize this is going to be 12 to 18 months, I would not have applied for these loans, or I would have applied in different amounts and structured things completely different. But because I did, now I have these giant loans, and it's a year later, and at some point they're going to need to be paid back. we don't
Well,
know.
the PPP you're not going to have to pay back, but the
Well,
EID.
some of it I will.
Can
I used it.
Gentlemen, can I just jump in here for a minute? So you, Justin, you're not alone though. Like you and probably more than 2/3 of the businesses in America right now that decided to jump in these loans are in the exact same position as you. And they're all suffering from the same lack of opportunity to create business. So what the Biden administration is trying to do is create direct relief to you only. There was a lot of loopholes in the old bill that had came out about a year ago. So unfortunately, a lot of people who didn't need it got the money anyway and used it and didn't give it back. And the people who got caught gave it back in a moment of charity and didn't want to look bad. And their PR team jumped in at the last minute. We all get how that shit works. But at the end of the day, like a lot of people who didn't need the money got it. And now the Biden administration is trying to jump in and saying we need a huge stimulus plan if we want to rebound by the end of 2021 into 2022. So they offered a huge plan right out of the bat. They already know that they can get it passed through budget reconciliation, which just for people who don't quite understand how legislation gets passed, budget reconciliation does not require 60 votes in the Senate. It just requires a basic 51-49 majority. Okay, which with Kamala Harris as vice president, you do not need any Republican support. Plus, if you ask any American on the street, whether it's in New York City or Wichita, Kansas, everybody is in support of more relief for businesses, considering the consistent lockdown for 18 months, 12 months, 15 months, what have you. So right now, you have Republicans that are countering an offer for $600 billion, I'm sorry, 600 billion, the counter offer for the 1.9 trillion. Yeah. But the basic facts of it all is that Republicans are constantly wanting to downsize a bill to offer relief to Americans, but we're not having the honest conversation about how people are truly struggling. I mean, people want to work.
But where's this money coming from? Well, I'm really curious.
I mean, well,
We're
can I
borrowing.
ask then, how did we afford the Trump tax cuts in 2017, but yet every Republican was in support of it? It was the biggest budget deficit that we've ever created in American history.
But that's opportunity cost versus actually paying out.
Yeah, but it hasn't afforded any
I think it was
opportunity, David. I mean,
it was very stupid to do. I don't think that the $2.2 trillion bill, but you're foregoing future income as opposed to paying out. One requires loans, one requires just not paying out. You save money that way.
Right.
There's a couple big things in the bill that makes it different from what the Republicans want to what the Democrats want. The 1.3 billion price tag, a lot of that is relief to states. What happens when business goes down? Tax revenues go down. California actually did all right because most of our tax base is off of super wealthy, like 50% of our tax base is off of the 1% in California.
Yeah, not the ones that
guess what?
To Texas though.
That's truly only a handful. California actually has another
with
surplus. Yes, but they have a surplus again this year during the pandemic. People say that California's finances are always screwed, and yet they always come out with a surplus. So I see both sides. Like they do spend a lot of money, but I mean, we have a surplus this year. The tax base has not dipped in California because the super wealthy 1%, they made out really, really well here, and they're just paying more in tax. So the tax base in California really has not changed.
But let me tell you something. As somebody who literally sells Manhattan real estate, who just left Manhattan, and watching a lot of businesses close up, Adam can attest to this because we're there literally every day.
Oh, I understand.
A lot of these companies are moving into New Jersey, which is where I relocated residentially. And I follow a lot of people who are based, obviously, like New York and LA are basically like sister cities in my opinion. But a lot of the people that I follow are telling me about all these people getting out of California, mostly because they don't like, what's going on in terms of leadership. Just like in New York City, we don't like what's going on in terms of leadership. But a lot of people are leaving these places, and that's because the legislation is not, it's basically directed towards the poor people. So I mean, that's my opinion on that.
And that's a
and
fair opinion to
and
have. But in California, the thing is, you still have these billionaires that are happy to live here because they get to live in California. Silicon
sure,
Valley is not
but
going
what
anywhere.
happens? But what happens when Texas now has more shit going? I feel like the argument that you're making is same, and I get it that you're a liberal, so this will sound a bit back-asswards to you. But this is like the factory that's dumping their sludge into the river, being like, but look at the water. It continues to run clear. So like, obviously, we're not causing a problem. The water is still clear. At a certain
No,
point,
I don't
at a
think
certain point,
that's.
you're gonna hit. What's that? The Lorax movie. I speak for the trees. What's
It's just called the Lorax.
that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
was gonna say it's just the
I
Lorax.
also don't really know where this logic is going at
Well,
all.
what
Yeah,
I'm saying is you
can
got
I-
the Onceler, who's like, I got the last seed. And it was slow process, but all of a sudden you turn around and the Onceler
Well,
who's selling
Can
this
I just
thing with you.
break this down to brass tacks and down all these metaphors? Like, you're a business owner. You should be mad as fuck over the past 8 months. Sorry.
Yeah.
You should be not only mad, but you should be fucking just absolutely done.
Have you ever driven a car in such disrepair?
American leadership.
That's what our business is, right?
American leadership has completely failed on every single level, and people woke the fuck up. The only reason why Donald Trump's presidency existed to begin with is because people just stopped giving a shit.
But look, let me tell you, our
So
business is down.
wait. Just I have a bigger point, and I know you're going to agree with me as a business owner. I promise you. The problem now is that we have to do the cleanup job over the next couple of years. So a lot of what the COVID relief bill is about, that Biden's trying to enforce, is to clean up the crap that's gone on for the past 9 months. So you and I would say more than 60% of business owners are feeling duped about the fact that they got involved in these loans and grants, and things were very confusing. It was very fastly passed. So there was so many loose regulations, and then things were changing halfway through. People didn't know how to quite follow the guidelines. There wasn't clear indications on how to follow those guidelines. So a lot of people got screwed. And a lot of what this new bill is trying to do is to fix that, to not make businesses that have been suffering for 8 to 15 months, which we all predict we're not going to fully get out of this until about Q3 of 2021. A lot of these businesses are trying to survive at this point with a mountain of debt that's just chasing them just a little bit away. So a lot of what this bill is going to do is eliminate that. So when businesses can fully reopen, they're not swamped with massive amounts of debt. And listen, we could talk about the deficit, we could talk about taxes, and we could talk about the economy, but this is not the time and place to ever talk about that. I mean, I sat in enough economic classes in my lifetime, and also have been running a business where I could sit here and be like, when you're in a time of crisis, caring about the deficit is probably the last thing on your radar when you just want the business to survive. And America is a business, and we need it to survive before we start caring about balancing its budget.
You're on a sinking ship, and your cargo is lumber, and you think, well,
right.
Shit, if we get there and we don't have any lumber to sell, we don't make any money. Yeah, but if you don't use the lumber to patch your ship, you're going to sink, and no one's going to make it there at all.
Exactly. Thank you for clearing that up.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the impeachment, guys, because I feel like 3.5 weeks ago, the impeachment was looking super strong. Basically, if somebody stuck a gun to my head, I'd feel very much compelled. 10 minutes later, my adrenaline was still going, to say, you know what, guns should be completely illegal across the entire United States. But 3 weeks later, I'd be like, well, yeah, that was scary, but I got through it, and it is against the Constitution that people really should be able to have guns. If maybe we tighten a couple of the knobs here, and maybe we don't allow like Uzis or something, but people should still be able to have guns. So I feel like these senators and congressmen were terrified in the moment, and we're basically dealing with this decreasing momentum moving forward against this, again, for the impeachment against the former president. but I really feel like we're running out of steam, and I don't think the impeachment is going to happen. And now you have all this legal, can you even impeach a president who's no longer in office? Obviously,
Technical point.
Technical point.
He has been technical point. He's been impeached twice. He already has been impeached. The impeachment happens by the House, and that's the conviction in the Senate.
Okay. But can we continue to?
Well, there is historical precedent. In the 1800s, you had a we don't have this position anymore.
Secretary
of War, and he did some shady deals. He resigned before he could be impeached, but they said, you know what, the shit that he did was so bad, we're going to impeach him anyways because it prevents him from holding office at any point in the future. So there is constitutional precedent to impeach someone out of office, but the value of it, that's no question. Is this a good thing to do politically for the Democrats? Because that's the only question right now. We know for a fact that the Senate is not going to vote to convict. We had a motion last week that was 55 to 45 saying, is this even constitutional? And they said 45 Republicans said it's not even constitutional. You got 5 that said yes. If you think you're going to get to 17, you're not.
David, I know you mentioned the Democrats there and their ability, but I don't know if it's as much as for the Democrats as it is for the Republican Party as a whole. I mean, I haven't really been paying as much to politics over the past few weeks. It's been a lot going on, but knowing what I know, I definitely have watched McCarthy as the minority leader in the House, and I've watched McConnell, and they have 2 very different methods of controlling their caucus. And McCarthy is still very much embracing Trumpism, while McConnell and his caucus in the Senate, as the Republican minority, are controlling themselves in a very different manner. Especially just with the Marjorie Greene Thomas person. She's insane. But
McCarthy is flip-flopped on this. After the storming, he said the words that he said were very inflammatory, and he laid some blame, and he got immense pushback, which led to his bending over this week of going down to Mar-a-Lago.
I feel like that's because he also lost that momentum where he was actually afraid, and his colleagues were very afraid, and then that wore off, and then there were other factors, which you just mentioned, kind of the pushback. And
people have a really short memory, and in politics, it's even shorter, especially how Trump has just manipulated the news cycle this last 4 years, where every day it's a news story. Nothing holds any traction. When we think about Benghazi, that lasted for months. How many Trump scandals have lasted more than a week?
But gentlemen, you're forgetting one important fact here. After the insurrection and what Trump had caused, 30,000 Republican members dropped being supportive of the Republican Party and became independent, if not Democrat. 10,000 alone in Arizona, which is now a true swing state. So wait,
excuse me while I don't get hard about 30,000 out of 350 million.
Well, I mean, the last election in 2016 was won by less than 20,000 votes. So I mean, we could debate that all day. But 30,000 Republicans dropping.
I mean, in one state, but I mean, it was lost by -3 million.
Michigan and Wisconsin
by popular.
But well, I'm talking about in the margins of the electoral vote, but nonetheless, we agree.
In 2 states, though, the margins not by. I mean, in 2 states, that's how
you're trying
the electoral college is fucked.
Reel it in, guys. Reel it in.
The point that I'm trying to make is that the impeachment itself, we can argue all day if Trump did something right or wrong. But I think the writing is on the wall for Republicans that if they want to continue to be back to the party that they were 15 years ago, where they actually could win elections in a sense of not being on this third rail of politics, of this extremism attitude, they need to relinquish the Trump mantra. And I think that a lot of people in the Republican Party are fighting against it a lot now, where it's becoming a real divide through the party. And you're going to see this over the next 18 months under the Biden administration, where Republicans are trying to figure out what message works. But I think a lot of them are starting to realize that Trump is not someone they want to support anymore. So whether he gets convicted or not, from my understanding and what I see, it doesn't matter anymore. Trump is going to get ripped limb from limb. He is the sacrificial goat for the past 4 years of what's gone on in politics in America.
Don't think that's going to happen.
Gotta disagree with you.
I do.
Justin, I
All
sent
right.
you
Well,
two links
I'd love to hear
today
it. I
to the
just
Hill.
don't know if I fully agree with that. Trump
Here are
is
my
gonna
data
get
points.
ripped.
Okay.
Here are my
I want to hear because David sent me this information. And go ahead, David.
here are my data points. There's a poll that came out today. I sent the link to Justin. One of my favorite sites is thehill.com, thehill.com/latest, and it's just really great headlines. They point you to the original source. You have people from the right and the left contributing. A lot of times they're both very, very stupid. In any case, today you had a report about a poll that came out and said that 64% of Republican voters would join a new third party if Trump started it. 64%. He has such control over the Republican Party right now. He's still in the driver's seat. We kicked him off Twitter, and he's still controlling.
That's what I was just going to say. Because Adam, you're saying this kind of third rail, and
it's not.
But what I actually truly believe needs to happen is I do believe, and I think this will be for the greater good. I think it'll be the greater good of the Trump supporters, and the greater good for the true Republican Party, and the greater good for the country, so you know who stands where. But I do actually believe that Trump needs to create a third party. I'm not saying he needs to lead it, because
I agree.
I actually think the impeachment needs to go through, and he needs to be formally convicted. Because
I think all four of us do.
I don't disagree.
I'm also saying that he needs to play a major role in this new party. He doesn't have to run for office, and I don't think if we have a new party, anybody's running for office in this new party in the next, normally I would say 50 years, but I'm like, holy fuck, it's 2021. Shit happens way faster now. Over the next probably 12 years or so. I don't think anybody will come close to running for presidential office from this new party. But I think it's going to be greater for the country to have this extremist Republican, just crazy psycho, zero abortions, everybody has guns type of like super religious party, because I think there's a lot of people that are screaming for that. And I think that's going to actually bring a stronger centrist party of Republicans and Democrats, because I think I know we're all liberal, but I feel like I'm the least liberal of the four of us.
I don't know if I would agree with that. I'm not that liberal, but nonetheless, I'm not saying that I'm.
But we are in, Adam, you and I live in the most liberal of the cities of the four of us.
Fine by
so
me.
We see these crazy liberal actions, crazy liberal politicians, and we're like, that's insane. So
I'm sorry.
We are all incredibly socially liberal. Economically, we all have different, and I think we all actually kind of hem towards the center. I work in finance. James is in accounting. You two guys work in real estate and have been fucked over the last year by what happened with COVID and what happened with the government. I think we all kind of get that. None of us are Bernie bros. For instance, in the stimulus bill, there's the $15 minimum wage. I don't know if that's a good idea. I love everyone to make $15 an hour.
But David,
doing it by mandate.
It's going to happen no matter whether you like it or not. It happened in Florida. It's going to enact over the next 5 years. It's going to happen throughout the rest of the country.
By 2026.
And it happened with
it's
bipartisan support in Florida, because it's going to do a gradual increase, and that's how they're going to do it.
Exactly.
That's how they do anything. With any other state they can't compare. But Justin, I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't want to talk over everybody. So what I want to
interrupt me, but go ahead. I'll keep going.
That's why I said I don't want to interrupt you. But what I'm saying is,
I'm gonna.
Yeah, exactly. So
Adam, go.
You quoted a poll to me about 65% of Republicans are the ones that want to start a new party. Fine by me. They only represent 35% of the country to begin with, so fine by me. Out of the 225 million people that are registered to vote in this country, I'm fine with 35% of them that want to go rule their own fucking party, and 35%, and then 65% of that want to do that. Fine by me. Let the rest of America do its own thing while you guys want to run your jihad. Might I also add, you guys are arguing that that's a bad thing. Why don't we talk about the fact that we have 78% of Republicans that are saying there's never going to be a free and fair election ever again.
Yeah. It's
okay.
pretty fucked.
Why don't I also add the other factor, if we're going to talk about polling, you have
I'll talk about polling.
67% of Republicans saying that they feel they should enact violence to create the American dream again in this country because they think they'll never see it again.
They keep quoting the
I
Jefferson quote about the
understand.
tree of liberty needs to be, fed with the blood of patriots. Like, Jesus Christ, man, it's 2021.
I'm sorry
we're not,
to say
we're not
to my
shooting
Republican
each other
friends.
again.
Do you know how they used to fight wars back then?
Yeah, well, I mean, the point is,
Yeah, but also
you
like
can
let's
quote-
just line up it like across from each other.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm gonna have a big white X over my chest.
That's actually so now like the army.
Hold up, I'm gonna play drums. Let them know we're coming.
So, but I mean, you know how like PETA is like crazy about animals. I'm like, dude, do you know
Yes,
like
as
we
know.
used to sacrifice fucking people like our chicken and poultry industry sacrifices chicken.
Man, how do you think I
As
ate chicken nuggets last night?
You ate chicken nuggets?
I don't know if it was last night, but 2 nights ago.
Okay, there's one
I can't
thing.
remember what you had for dinner.
Adam is 7 years old, by the way. He didn't have chicken
Okay.
tenders.
Apparently.
He didn't have
Were they
chicken wings.
dinosaur shaped? Were
Did
they
you have-
dinosaur shaped? And did you have them with barbecue sauce?
And did you have
Ask me in private after we get off the podcast.
These are the hard hitting questions.
Yeah. I want to weigh in one thing because we were talking about the impeachment.
Go
There's
ahead.
one thing that neither of you mentioned that I think is really important about the reason for going through with this impeachment is that the Democrats realize that with Trump defeated, the Republican Party has a reckoning where they need to decide whether they're going to continue to embrace Trump and the politics of Trump, or they're going to separate from him and go back to doing whatever they were doing before. And this
Agreed.
impeachment trial, even if the Democrats know that it's not going to succeed, when I look at the political futures markets right now, I'm seeing about a 7% chance that there's enough votes to convict, and that's probably overstating it.
By about 7%.
But whatever the case is, I don't think anybody is really expecting a conviction to happen. But what it's going to do is it's going to force every single Republican senator to be on the record as to what direction they want the Republican Party to go to. And the Democrats know that, and they will be able to campaign against that and say, this is what happened when you had Trump, and you guys still supported it despite seeing its consequences. And you had an opportunity to go a more moderate path, or at least a less insane one. And
here's my one caveat
nuts.
on the impeachment is that there are 3 restrictions. Well, there's a handful of restrictions on the First Amendment right to free speech. One of them is you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Everyone knows that. You can't say something that's not true. Second is defamation. You can't say something that you know is false about someone else. It depends on who the
Well, you
person
can
is.
yell fire in a crowded theater. if there's a fire there.
Nobody makes me breathe my own CO2. All right.
All right.
The
Sure.
third is the lemon test. It says that people in public schools, their speech can be regulated, meaning they can be punished for saying bad things in school because you're under 18. I actually have a question as to whether or not what Trump said rises to the fourth. Sorry, another one. Fighting words. Words that, and I think this is how the statute said the precedent is that words that to a reasonable person would make you punch them out. Going up to someone and saying, and on the middle of New York City, saying, I mean, you probably deal with this every single day with the homeless, and I do too in Sacramento. California has a lovely homeless problem. But someone comes up to you, gets in your face, and calls you a fucking cunt, blah, 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 blah. Fighting
Honky ass
words.
cracker.
All right.
Yeah, that's Funky Fred. That's my neighbor who lives in the parking lot next to me. In any case, you can't say words that to a rational person would make them feel violent. I don't know if Trump's words rise to the level of fighting words. I don't know if this is not protected First Amendment speech. I have some questions about that. I really think everything he did is awful, and he definitely instigated it, but does it rise to that level? It's a bright line test. I don't know if it does. Yes, I think he should be impeached. He should never be able to run again, but I don't know if it rises to that level.
I think it's a straight line test where you can look at what did he say and what immediately happened afterwards.
But they're unhinged already. They believe in QAnon.
Well,
he didn't talk about QAnon.
No, David, you're also rationalizing their behavior, but you're not.
No,
You can't
not
rationalize. No, but I'm sorry, but you are a little bit, because you also have to
I'm explaining,
compound the
not
past
rationalizing. I'm saying they're
4 years.
inherently irrational.
But
Let
the
me add some-
past
let me-
4
let me-
years that
Adam, let me add
I'm
some
speaking.
perspective. Hold up. If I threw a giant party in my backyard and I was like, this neighborhood sucks, let's do something about it. And I threw this giant party and was like, here's some torches. And then the neighbors' houses ended up on fire coincidentally. Do you think I would have anything to do with that?
He didn't even provide the torches. They brought their own. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Like,
They brought
look, I think it was terrible, but I don't know if you can say that
Okay,
he
but-
made that happen.
but
They're
what-
already
what-
revved up. They might have done it already because of all the
But
lies
why?
before. But
Okay,
I don't know.
but you just, David, you took my argument, and I think me, James, and Justin's argument as well. They were already revved up. Why were they revved up? Because of 5 years of the
But
exact.
you can separate out
same
these lies by
conver-
you've got
You
Hannity.
It's
Yes, you can. You
been-
can say you've
it's
got
been the
Hannity. You've got
exact-
Giuliani fanning these
But-
flames. Ellen
Well,
Wood.
Giuliani's a joke, but the point that I'm trying to make
don't think
is
so.
that it's been
Not to his
5
supporters.
years. It's been 5 years of heightened rhetoric leading up to this point. Because, you know, Justin, you and I have talked about this in the office offhand at times, but we've always said that if Trump didn't win 2016, this would have still been his game plan to begin with. We remember he talked about the election being rigged back in 2016. So
he
this has
actually
been-
said things like, if I lose, it's probably rigged. If I win,
Right.
we'll see.
I get it. But
So
you have the
my
ACLU.
point
Do you
is-
think they're happy when they're defending the white supremacists?
No,
it's hateful speech,
but my point
but does
is,
it rise above
if-
that level? I don't know.
if I've had 5, if I'm like, for instance, if you have somebody who's like David Duke, all right, who's an awful human being in America and in American history overall and in American politics, he's an awful human being. All
Despicable
right,
human
the
being.
guy has
Former-
tried to run for state government and federal government many times.
For anyone who doesn't know who
But-
David Duke is, he's a former Grand Dragon of the KKK.
Thank you, David.
Thank
But
you.
the point is, this is a gentleman that has proven himself to be an awful human being, and it's
Yes.
based on his prior rhetoric leading up to the point where he was never elected into office and expelled from ever running again. So the same thing could be said about Trump and what he has done, where I don't necessarily know if he should be convicted per se.
Well, there's
But
been no
hold on.
formal
Should he be
mechanism to
voted?
stop David
Should he
Duke
be
from running
voted to
again.
a point where he's not allowed to run again? There, 100%. You have my petition. Like, this guy should never be allowed to run again. And I think his family that supports that politics should also be part of that, because his family was a integral part in getting him elected to begin with.
Sure.
So
What's
it
the
should
last
not just be the individual, but it should be the name behind it. Just
Okay.
like when we say Bush and Clinton,
Yeah,
now
but that's
Trump,
like
it's the
that's
same
grossly
problem.
unconstitutional.
And it's
Hold on a
also-
second.
Well,
That's guilt by
I get that,
association,
but
which you can't do.
Hold on. I want to back
I'm not
up.
saying I'm happy about it.
Hey,
I,
No, no, no.
I want him
Wait a second.
gone, but I don't know if you can
Sorry.
criminalize speech
Here,
like
just
this.
listen. First of all, this is not criminalizing. Impeachment is a political process, not a criminal process. Second of all,
Correct.
I think we need to analyze something else that really hasn't been mentioned, which is, what is the charge that Trump has been impeached under? And inciting insurrection. So
That's a,
Right.
So you have to look and see, based on the events of, and we can just look at purely that day. Based on the events of that day, Trump was the last person to speak. Before Trump spoke, you had people like Giuliani on stage saying, we need to have trial by combat.
yes.
You had Donald Trump Jr. talking about how this was stolen from them and they need to take it back. And then Trump goes on stage after having listened to all of this and is aware of not only the mood of the crowd, but the words that have been said before him. And he says,
he's very savvy with the crowd. He knows what he's saying,
So-
and he
right.
couches his
And
language.
so he says, we are going to march down Pennsylvania Avenue and go to the Capitol and stop them from stealing this from us. So you can, there's no bright line here. It's a straight line of, he says, we're going to march on the Capitol. And then as soon as his speech ends, where do they go? They march to the Capitol. Next.
Devil's advocate.
Next.
Did he say break down the barriers and barge in? No,
No, he said we're marching on the Capitol, and you don't need to. Like, if you're going to be hyper literal about this, it's going to be really hard to convict anybody of anything.
Exactly, and that's the problem.
Well,
But no, the problem is that your conclusions are going to lead to
do
almost
you know,
everybody
you know
being
what they
acquitted.
take? Listen, do you know?
Well,
how
what's the
people
future?
twist-
They're going to be acquitted.
Listen to me. Do you know how people twist the Constitution? The same way they twist the Bible. All right. There's a passage in the Bible that says somebody named David gave a piece of bread to somebody named Joe. And that means that in your life, if somebody comes along and they don't have $10,000, that you should take this out of you should give them your spleen. So people take the weirdest shit and they contextualize it to whatever. People take a ton of shit out of the Constitution and turn it into whatever they feel that it needs to mean. I feel
absolutely,
like
100% confirmation bias.
I feel like right now the country is divided so fiercely down the center that I don't feel that you're going to have the Republican support right now moving forward.
What was the other article I sent you? It was another poll that said that 50% think he should be acquitted, the 50% think he should be convicted. I mean,
I saw that
like I said,
same poll
you could not
today,
be.
by the way.
So
I've got polling data that's very recent, and I'll give you the numbers.
I pulled mine from the Hill. Just
all right. So I pulled mine from the most recent poll that I can find, which is a Marist poll. President Trump was impeached by the House of Representatives. Blah blah blah. Do you think the U.S. Senate should acquit him on these charges or convict him? Acquit 41, convict 50, unsure 9.
Okay, but what is the Senate?
Okay,
Compare about the general. And I think if the last 5 or 6
55,
years
45
have anything to say about polls, and this is what I was telling Adam a long time ago, I just want you to go to the fucking mall and look at the people that stand in the middle of the fucking mall corridors with clipboards and watch them as they approach people. Because the people that are actually polled, the people that take time after a phone call to answer questions about how the representative did, or people that do an internet survey, I could ask like the majority of the people that I know the last time you completed a poll, and then I choose that sample of the people that I know, and I just think about who's answering polls. To me, polls don't mean anything, because I walk by people in the mall with a clipboard, and they're like, do you just have 30 seconds? And I'm like, what the fuck?
I get that.
I'm obviously doing nothing right now, killing time. I don't have any extra time.
Sampling bias is a huge problem in polls, and you had a lot of outlets say no, absolutely, you're 100% correct. What were the estimates before the election? Plus 9 or 10% for Biden. What did it end up being? About 2%,
the average
52,
was about
48 nationally.
8%. 8% was the average.
And it came out to be what, a 7 million different votes, so about 1 to 2%.
2 million vote difference between Biden and Trump.
1 to 2% versus 8%. So we acknowledge that.
No, Trump lost the election by about 7%, and the average.
I'm going over population, not over voters.
All right, so let me get
8 million.
You're right.
Look, hey guys, I'll meet you. Listen to me. I want a thumbs up or thumbs down straight to your camera if you think Trump's going to be convicted.
Will be or should be?
Will.
0% chance.
All right. So that's the end of the conversation. Is there anything we didn't touch on, David? Also, I want to talk about. I got a question for David one second, but I do want to talk about what we're going to bring on the next podcast, because that's going to be pretty cool. But David,
let's talk about the GOP for a minute, just because what Adam said, there is a reckoning in the GOP that they need to have, and I disagree with Adam on his point saying that they're going to go back to being moderate. I don't think that's going to happen. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has tweeted about Jewish space lasers starting the 2018 California wildfires, saying that the Parkland.
We're short on time, but go ahead. I want to hear this.
I'll go quickly. Saying the Parkland school shooting, all school shootings are false flags. Anyways, abhorrent comments. You got the Jewish Republican Committee coming out and detesting her, and you know who the Republicans really like having in their corner is some Jews, because it gives them like a head against their anti-Semitism. In any case, they had a meeting on Tuesday night, and half of the GOP conference sat down, and half of the GOP conference stood up and gave her a standing ovation for standing up to the big guys. I mean, a QAnon believer thinking that Democrats, like flay the faces of kids and then drink their blood. Denying school shootings.
David, I just, because
there's these two warring parties.
Your audio isn't super crisp, but this is like actual reality. So can you just share the name again and share some of her beliefs? And then we'll remind people that half of the people stood up and applauded this woman, and half of the people sat down.
Of her own caucus, not the Democrats.
I was going to say,
we're not saying the Democrats. I'd say the Democrats sat down, the Republicans stood up. Half the Republicans. Yeah.
Well, let me also say that today in the House, there was a vote by the entire House to remove Marjorie Taylor Greene, representative from Georgia, from all of her committee posts. She was on the Education Committee, which deals with schools. So, coming out and saying school shootings don't happen and they're fake events, probably not a good look. In any case, today they voted. They removed her from all committees, which is a little scary that a majority party is kicking the minority party off of committees. That's a different conversation. Some of the things that she believes or posted about and says, I was just asking questions via Glenn Beck. The Rothschild bankers, which is, dog whistle for the Jews. Maybe they had a space laser from a satellite and they fired it at the camp area of California and they started the fire so they could profit off of the insurance.
Yo, I just want to know, how did she figure out that we created the space laser? How did she get that? How did she get that right?
Maybe from Roger Moore.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
I don't quite know.
We did such a good job hiding it, and she, of all people, figured it out. I don't know.
The only other space laser I saw was that bad James Bond movie with the ice.
Exactly, Moonraker, with fucking Roger Moore and Jaws fucking biting down on fucking cables.
You know what? Just like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm going to blame George Soros because he's another Jew that we can blame. So I think he's in on it.
This is what gets us kicked off air.
There is a deleted video out there.
So
go ahead, Jay.
The four of us are going to convene. So stay on the line after we close up the live session. So thank you guys for joining us. We're going to close up the cast here. If you guys are watching live, thank you so much. I see you guys on TikTok. TikTok following, not crazy tonight. I've been myself pretty lax on TikTok. I apologize to you guys. Instagram crowd has been there more or less the whole time. Thank you guys. Check out my stories because we're going to do a new episode on pet peeves. And I know I can see like David and Adam, these guys have some major pet peeves. In James' defense last night, pet peeves and grinding your gears. I was thinking about this today in the shower, where everybody gets good thoughts.
There is a difference, by the way.
Grinding your gears and pet peeves are different things. And I would say the snow plow pushing the snow back in front of your driveway is a grind your gear, whereas somebody chewing with their mouth open is a pet peeve. So I want to differentiate the two. But one of the next podcasts is going to be about pet peeves, and that's also going to depend on when we get my friend Jamie Kane, real estate attorney, back on the podcast. She's been featured in a couple of episodes, 3 or 4 episodes, I think. She's a real estate attorney going to fill people in on what's going on with the cancel rent, because there's this crazy movement for cancel rent. There's an eviction moratorium. There's crazy stuff going on, especially for rentals in New York.
Yeah.
She's a New York real estate attorney, obviously. So
California too.
Well, she's not a California real estate attorney, but similar things.
No, just in terms of
similar things.
Liberal governments and rent policy.
And also kind of nationwide. So we're going to talk about what's happening real estate wise nationwide. But really, I think, and that's going to be super interesting. And I think a lot of people are going to want to tune in, especially because a lot of the people we know, especially in New York City, are renters, and a lot of people struggling. Actors, there's no Broadway. Most TV and film not shooting because, or they're on a very, they're just very restricted. A lot of TV shows just did reruns.
Bartenders, Justin? I mean,
Well,
shit, we'd like to drink. Come on.
And then obviously the food and beverage industry totally crippled. A lot of people not working, really shit
Hammered.
Adam doesn't know that he was about to be featured in a TV show on NBC, but because of coronavirus, that whole shit got basically shit canned. So
Great love for me there.
yeah, we lost our TV spot as a New York City brokerage.
We could have been like Sunset in LA, man. We
No.
could have done that TV show on Netflix.
It would have been a little grimier. This is New York City. There's no sunset in New York City. All right.
Is
Yeah,
there a rule at your brokerage that you have to shave your head?
No, I think
It's
we're Adam and I were
enduring enough
formerly
stress.
the only two bald guys, and then Adam hired another bald guy who sits across from Adam's desk, and I constantly walk by Adam's office and I mix the two of them up. So
this is 100% true, by the way.
it's very
Adam, you should install a mirror in your office so that Justin confuses himself.
on that
Also,
note, guys,
Dirk, I have to tell you the story of the time that me, Adam, and Justin were in a New York City bar.
this gets pretty.
Oh
interesting.
no.
Guys, we're taking that story off the air. If you want to know, shoot me a DM. I'll be recording the story. I'm going to publish that separately. But thank you guys for joining us on live. I'm going to cut the live stream. And don't forget, you can subscribe to SipTalk on YouTube. And you can obviously get the audio on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else you get podcasts. Thank you guys for joining. James, David, Adam, stay online. I'll catch you guys live soon. Thank you. Adios.
All right. So that was a politics episode. Sorry if that got a bit dicey. Next episode, we are talking about pet peeves, and quite a few of you guys have told me some of your crazy ass pet peeves. Looking forward to hearing more, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe so you see me or hear me on the next episode, and I'll see you then. See ya.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.